I'm Jenell Theobald of the Ism Youth Files. An Education Week Research Center analysis of state data found 31 states saw drops in overall graduation rates for the class of 2021. That's compared with 14 states for the class of 2020. 22 states saw declining graduation rates among students with disabilities in 2020 through 2021, compared with 10 states the previous year. Under federal law, public schools must provide free, appropriate public education to students with disabilities. In an article by Youth Today, students with disabilities generally have an individualized education plan that describes the services and accommodations they should receive. These requirements were largely ignored during the pandemic.
My school had a broken elevator for about 4 months and they did nothing to fix it, so that kind of shows how much they care about disability rights. They've treated my disabled peers pretty poorly in the past, and luckily I've never had problems with my own disabilities at the school, but that's because I don't really ask for many accommodations, besides an adapted gym class, which I was very lucky to be able to receive accommodations for.
Veronica Salron is a junior at Center Grove High School in Greenwood, Indiana. The school has 2,500 students. Veronica struggles with a connective tissue disorder and uses her writing to describe these struggles. She sent her poem, Bent and Broken, to us for the Speaking Our Truths book.
The bed sinks as I lie, relieving the weight from the day. I lie awake with sparks in my skull and spines in my sides, wondering, weeping, whispering, what did I do to deserve this? Yelling out to any higher power, whoever is willing to listen to the bent and broken. Mornings full of mourning, longing for the life I once led, yet wanting to love the one I lead. Complications and confusion crowding my cranium. Is my brain bent and broken as well? Both arms are tied to two thoughts. The executioner shoots, the thoughts pull, tearing me up inside and tearing up my eyes. Bent and broken, and bashing my own brain, just for being her beautiful self. Stuck in my tracks, the ground beneath my feet is honey. Contrarily, though, I am stuck. I feel more at home than ever. A pretty and pristine perspective. I wish I could live in it too. Cover me, oh liquid gold. Sickeningly sweet, stolen from your comfortable hive. Falling to my knees, I shove the feelings way back in the dark, inside the cold cabinets filled with the deepest secrets, the deepest thoughts, the biggest lies, and now how I feel about myself deep down, bent and broken but putting on a fixed face. Acceptance accelerates, but I still struggle. Walking becomes harder and harder, more painful, as though my joint sockets are sandpaper, rubbing down whatever is left of the bent and broken me. Each reminder of my pain pulls me down. I cover myself in the syrup. Beneath me, putting on that positive perspective that makes the bent and broken attractive again.
Veronica says she has hypermobility spectrum disorder. This is a condition where your joints overstretch and cause pain. People with this disorder are at risk to injury.
I wrote it during a time where I was somewhat recently diagnosed and in a pretty bad pain flare-up where it hurt to use my hands and walking was really hard because school takes a lot out of me. I have a really big school and just getting from class to class takes a lot of energy. And just writing about it helps me feel better and it validates my own feelings.
During the pandemic, the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights made a projection. They said the number of complaints against school districts filed by parents of children with disabilities would nearly triple by the end of 2022 to about 28,500. That was projected to continue at high levels through 2023. Making education accessible to learning is crucial. So is mobility in school spaces. While Veronica isn't a wheelchair user, she has friends who are.
My friend who just graduated, she had a lot of hardship in getting accommodations for her frequent hospital visits and doing online school when the rest of school was in person. And for me, I haven't had to ask for many accommodations, and they were luckily pretty accepting about getting me into the disabled gym class. Some of the classrooms, they're very small. I don't think someone in a wheelchair could get through the spaces. And of course, we had an elevator down for like 4 months and nothing was done to fix it, which is not ADA accessible.
Overcrowded schools with large populations of students can present added challenges in the best of times.
I use crutches occasionally, and sometimes I use a cane. It really depends on how long the outing is or how I'm feeling. At school, I don't really use anything. I probably should. It's just kind of more of a hassle for me, and it would help because of how tight classrooms are. The hallways are crazy. There is so much pushing, and it's so crowded. There's a lot of articles written about that, how our school was overcrowded during the pandemic. There was no mask mandates. I still wore one because I wanted to keep myself and my immunocompromised friends safe.
But it was mental health that challenged Veronica and her friends the most during isolation.
Earlier in the pandemic, the isolation had led me to have mostly online friends, but some of those didn't turn out so well, and I ended up feeling really isolated, like nobody truly cared about me, and coupling in the fact that my health started getting worse coincidentally around the pandemic time, it culminated in me being very mentally unhealthy around last year. I'm doing much better now, but my mental health at the beginning and middle of the pandemic before now was not very good, and I can definitely tie some of that into the isolation of being alone in the pandemic.
Since being back in person at school, Veronica Salrin says she still sees the effects of the pandemic on her friends.
I can definitely see how the pandemic has affected my friends, especially tying into puberty around that time, and the isolation has caused many of my friends to struggle with depression. I struggled with depression for a while back in 2020 and 2021, and it's just very, very difficult. It's more difficult to see people you care about going through that than to see yourself going through it, honestly. I have had to report my friends when I've seen them talk about how they've tried to hurt themselves, and I do feel bad when they get upset at me, but I'd rather have an unhappy friend than a dead friend. I think there definitely is stigma on reporting, like snitches get stitches, and that did play through my head when I think about helping my friends, but I honestly I don't know, I just keep telling myself it's the right thing to do. I want my friends to be healthy. And luckily, the friend in question, we're both in a much better mental state now than we were during the earlier stages of the pandemic.
The social model of disability emphasizes that people are disabled by barriers in society, whether physical, institutional, or by people's attitudes, but not by their impairment. That's according to a report by the National Center for Biotechnology Information. It goes on to state that by removing these societal barriers, people with disabilities can enjoy greater independence, choice, and equality. The first step is awareness that this is a real problem for mental health. It seems to me the current solution is to send people with disabilities to mental health professionals, but we need to have more support from the community because there just aren't enough professionals to deal with everyone's needs. I have this memory. My mom and I were picking berries one day. Other people had already come before us and picked all the easy-to-get berries. She told me if you were just willing to bend down a bit lower and look for those hard-to-reach places, then you will actually be able to fill up your buckets quickly. I think if you have the passion to help other people, and if you work hard and are able to adapt and know what you're passionate about, then you'd be able to make change in many ways. I'm now serving on the Oregon State Youth Development Council, and I will continue to advocate for both physical and developmental disability rights. You've been listening to the Ism Youth Files, Added Challenges, Disabilities, and the Pandemic. For more info about this project and the book, Speaking Our Truths, or to download a free mental health toolkit, visit mediarights.org. I'm Jenell Theobald.